Hello, friends. Oh my gosh. So
Hi.
see your
Hello,
beautiful
hello.
faces. And those I can't see, hello, hello, hello. While we're waiting, we have 64 people who have RSVP'd. Um, and as you can tell, we've got about a quarter of them here. And so I'm having the amazing experience of a lot of people jumping in a tad bit late. So maybe if you would, drop in the chat maybe where you are coming from and what type of coaching you do if you are currently coaching. So everybody can kind of get to know each other. And I'm sure not everybody knows everybody. So if you're just joining, I requested while we're waiting for a few more people to arrive, is use the chat to introduce yourself, maybe share where you're from, the type of coaching you're doing. I've seen some faces I haven't seen for a long while. And we'll jump in. And just a gentle reminder as we're getting started, I'm going to start by introducing my dear beloved coach and friend, Tonya. I'm going to launch into a few questions to kind of orient you to get to know her and some of her work. Um, and then we're going to open up for what I would say, a little bit of a Q&A, and then we're going to drop into the case study where we'll do a little bit of breakout session on what would you do in these shoes. And then we'll come back together and hear more from Tonya. So it's going to be fast, action-packed, and thank you so much for introducing yourselves. And with that in mind, I've got 9:02 and I've got more people coming in, but I'm feeling ready to jump in. And I think if it's okay with you, Tonya, I am going to pin us so that I don't get confused by everyone popping up. So just a gentle reminder, if you're not muted, please mute yourself just because it can draw the camera and be a little bit disrupted. And I know the other day I was giggling, someone forgot to mute and they were really regretful. It's one of those moments you hear about. But I am super, super excited here to be with Tonya, now known as Dr. Tonya Rivers. So a little warning about Dr. Tonya Rivers. She's going to try to convert you to do a PhD. I'm hearing the rumor mill, but I'd love to just kind of read the quick introduction that I came up with. But I want to say something personally about you as well. So professionally, today we're going to step inside the evolving world of whole person coaching in corporate settings. And so we're really looking at the coach's edge and kind of the deeper dimensions of work within the corporate arena. And what I love the most about this work is we really get to work with the whole person and see that transformational change. And so this session is going to feature Dr. Tonya Rivers. Um, your initials are just amazing. I was joking, like, I need a spreadsheet. But DBA, PCC, BCC, SPC, Powerhouse Executive Coach, which I can absolutely testify. I've seen her in motion many times. But she's also an organizational change strategist and the CEO of Purpose2Lead LLC. That's her biz. And with over 2 years, 2 years,
Communities. I see.
I'm going to go ahead and mute you out, Asela. Welcome. With over 2 decades of experience in tech leadership, Tonya guides leaders and teams through the deep waters of transformation using business agility. I'm having to let a lot of people in human-centered leadership development and whole person coaching. As a board certified coach, ICF professional certified coach, and a proud whole person certified coach and trauma informed coach alumni, Tonya has coached across industries from IT to healthcare, empowering organizations to lead with clarity, courage, and purpose. I love to think about, while we came up with when we were writing the marketing, she's known for helping high performing teams thrive in complexity while remaining grounded in a people centric or people first values. I actually thought of a better way to say it. Tonya really helps people to navigate complexity with care. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to say. And so my personal introduction to Tonya is I really appreciate the depth and the breadth that you bring into your coaching and the willingness to go to those places that a lot of people would be afraid to with someone in an executive role. So with that in mind, welcome. I'm excited to see you, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you, Ferosha, and hello, fellow coaches from everywhere that I'm seeing that you're coming from here. I'm actually from St. Louis, Missouri, right in the center of the country in the United States. So home of the St. Louis Cardinals, for those of you who are sports fans, are the Blues.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, I'd like to jump in with a few questions. And really, you've had such a remarkable career already in tech leadership, and now you're in your company, Purpose to Lead. What actually led you to incorporate with all your rich background, whole person coaching into your work with corporate leaders in particular and organizations?
Absolutely. So I will be the first to admit that I became an accidental coach and became an accidental coach through the pathway of becoming an accidental project manager or program manager. And so working in the information technology space across different industries, different companies, even though I had my technical prowess, yes, I can code, yes, I can do all these different things behind the scenes. I would often get tapped on the shoulder to lead different initiatives, to actually work very closely with the executive leadership groups, um, different problems that was coming up that they really wanted to have a think tank on. I would get tapped to come into the room because I had the technical background, but they also saw me as someone who could translate the technical with the business and be that liaison. And that's really how my career evolved from being more that hands-on techie to getting into the strategic leadership space around different IT initiatives, whether it be through mergers and acquisitions or otherwise, where executives were trying to figure out how do we make sure that we're ready to go for day zero as the new entity. And so with that, a lot of those conversations ended up being closed door, individual one-on-one conversations with different folks, just asking, can I run something by you? Or I'm experiencing different things. Can we talk? Can we have a coffee? And so that I started to see that I was actually doing a lot of one-on-one support with different folks in those critical roles where they really had the power to hire, fire, to really change the trajectory of the organizations that they were leading. And I had one of those executives say, I know you're supposed to be a part of our solutions team, but you're really more of a coach. Have you thought about becoming a coach or migrating into being a coach by title even? And I said, let me do some investigating of that. And a little over 10 years ago is when I started to dig into what coaching was and started to transition as to having that be a part of what I do as my purpose within organizations.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm giggling because I remember that day when someone told me, have you thought about being a coach? And I didn't even know what they were talking about. Like, what's coach? Sure, baseball coach, and then I looked into it and I was like, this is very interesting. And here we are today. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, how do you introduce, a holistic process of working with someone in corporate, like whole person coaching? Like you're coming in, where I think a lot of environments are very traditional or performance driven. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So it was a very nuanced approach. I'll say that. And why do I say nuanced? In many corporate environments over the years, and I've been in this space for over 25 years at this point in my career, and in most of the HR manuals, you are forbidden to talk about certain personal things, whether it be your belief systems, your faith based objectives. You're forbidden to talk about salary, different things that are just those no topics. And also, there's this perception that you're not to talk about emotions. You're supposed to always have this mask and always be ready to face the camera, so to speak, in how you present yourself to different teams or even your colleagues that are sitting in meetings with you. And so I had to figure out a way to really get deeper into those conversations to try to figure out based off of the different problems and challenges that leaders were bringing my way, helping them to really get a sense of what's the root cause. We call it RCA in the tech world. So what was really the root cause of this situation? How did it come about? And what are some of those elements that if they could reflect on that they can identify that may have triggered this type of situation to occur in the first place? And then based off of that, what could they potentially have done differently if if it's a situation that happened previously to come out with a different outcome or their more desired outcome? And so in thinking in that way, I had to delicately learn how to ask questions that were not so touchy-feely to the leaders because that's just a no-no area. Um, and I say that with the giggle because when we get into the touchy-feely or emotions, then from a leadership perspective, especially a lot of the folks in leadership are men. And so working a lot with men, um, that was a very uncomfortable thing. And unfortunately, and I know this because they told me so. And I said, okay, well, we won't talk about the E word. We won't talk about the feelings word, right? We'll just talk about the facts. Let's stick to the facts. And so navigating it, really just sticking to the facts. So when you experienced this situation, what came to mind? So using specific questions like that. When you experienced the situation, did you feel any sort of change in how you were feeling? Did you notice any changes in how you were breathing? Trying to assess if they were nervous or anxious without using the nervous word or the anxious word, right? Again, all of those different words associated with emotions. And so just really learning how to navigate that that line of, I would say, uncertainty and that gray area just to get to the root. And being able to do that, I noticed that through that I was able to develop a level of trust to where it became less that I had to dance around using those words because they would actually start to use the words even though I didn't, which invited me to be able to use the words because in our coach training, right, once a client mentions the word, you can recall, you can reflect back on it and say, well, you used the word blah, blah, blah. And I noticed this. Can you share more about what came to mind as you used that word? What were you experiencing in that moment, right? And that helped me to be able to really bridge the staying away from the touchy-feely aspects of coaching to really getting those leaders comfortable with talking about what they were feeling, what they were thinking, and really addressing some of those things that may have caused the challenges that they were trying to navigate through or overcome.
And I'm curious as you're talking, I'm one part of me is like, what are they coming to you for? Within, that you're starting to notice, knowing that there's a lot of uncertainty and complexity today, but what are some common themes of what the challenges or struggles are?
Yeah, some of the common themes were um, maybe the person noticed that they had we'll use the word blow up or flare up in a conversation in a meeting, and they weren't quite sure why they were encountered with that type of reaction. They said, well, I only said blah, 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 fill in the blank. And I don't know why that person seemed irate with me all of a sudden. And it was those kind of things. So being completely unaware of different word choices and how different words, because words matter. So the use of different words, how that can incite a certain reaction or response. And also even the nonverbals, because maybe you're saying something very innocent, but the nonverbals may give an entirely different message, right? It can be sarcastic, it can be a little, brash, whatever the case may be. And so just being totally disconnected and unaware of how their words and their behaviors actually could trigger certain things. That was one aspect. And other things would be, why is it that when I present certain things, I met with challenges, I met with counters, I'm having trouble getting folks to really listen to what I'm putting on the table and really take it to heart and let's break it down to see, okay, what's usable out of what I've suggested versus what's something we should put to the side. And so being taken seriously, those were some other things, especially um, different folks have been placed in high leadership positions without having a whole lot of experience. I'll say that. And and they're used to getting their way, right? And being a part of different social circles, they're used to when I what I say goes, or I'm the life of the party. And so coming into a situation where folks are looking at you and saying, you need to live a little bit longer and you need to watch and learn that type of behavior. So how to navigate all those different, as I call big E's, the big egos in the room that you're contending with to be relevant. That was some of the things that folks were coming to me with.
Wow. And a lot of it is, like you said, the big E's. I thought, the emotions, the ego, and our own ego of like, I got this and now I've been promoted and now I'm the new fish in the bigger pond.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like when you think about those things, what are the common threads that really tell you where to intervene? Like if you heard something like that, because I heard like the communication, the impact, swimming in a water where maybe you're not getting the respect. Like, are there a common theme that you're like, ooh, I need to go deeper? Like what tells you when?
Yeah, I think all of those things all ties into probably a term that many of you have heard before, and that's about having an executive presence. That's been a term that's used. There's several books that are out there on it. I'm a reader, by the way. I love to read. And so with that being said, just looking at when someone is in a vice president role and above, executive presence is everything. It's about confidence. It's about having courage. It's about being willing to take risks. It's about being able to effectively communicate thoughts and ideas. It's about being able to effectively negotiate or positively influence situations. And I use the word positively because we want to have a happier outcome when we're engaged in different things. And so different aspects of the situations that a client would bring to my attention, it would basically all align to that whole theme about having executive presence and really being seen as a true peer, being an equal at the table to really engage in those different conversations and discussions. And so that I would say that was the one thread that really, if you pulled that loose thread, all those other things would start to unwind and you'll see them pop out of the ball. I would say imagine that big yarn ball that you may give to a cat and it's all round and big. You see that loose thread and you pull it. And as you pull it, instead of it being the ball unraveling, maybe it's these themes that are falling out of that ball as letters, as word choices. That's really how I would envision it.
Yeah, and it almost reminds me of the importance of coaching the who
Hmm.
versus the behaviors. The
Hmm.
behaviors are kind of like the symptoms or the indicators, but there's something underneath.
Yes, yes. You cannot, I would say the key thing, and I know that this is something that my family and elders have always said, you can't judge a book by its cover. And because the cover can be very, very pretty and neat and put together and very interesting. But once you open up the cover, then you start to turn those pages and then you can discover all those different things as to what made this book such a great book. And there's good, there's bad, there's different things that are between the front cover and the end cover, right? So yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm curious because I know you've also gone through to become a trauma-informed coach. How has that played out in today's terrain and working with that executive presence?
Absolutely. So I will say back to what I said earlier, mentioning anything about feelings and emotions was a hard no. It was a hard stop. I don't want to talk about that. Why are we going down that path? I would get that response at times. But through that the conversation and establishing the trust that I mentioned earlier, which we all work to do as coaches with our clients, how to make sure that our clients feel that and see that they are truly in that safe place to really be transparent as they're willing to be. Um, Through that transparency, I started to experience behind in those closed door conversations, right? I would start to see the tears. I would start to see the anger. I would start to see more of the frustration that would come out because it was that one-on-one setting. and so I would also veer to say that even though I was able to establish trust and transparency in a one-on-one setting, I was equally able to establish it in a group setting of executives as well, because they saw me as being their safe space. They saw me as the voice of reason in many cases. And so being able to see that one-on-one transparency also reflected in that group setting was pretty interesting for me. I said, okay, I've reached another level of coaching here to be able to do that, because that's difficult to do. I would say that I was really shocked to see that. Um, a lot of things came up. I was in the realm of working with executives in COVID settings, right? And so, right at the heart of when folks were starting to get sick, and basically the country was getting ready to shut down here in the United States in March of 2020, and there was just a lot of conversations around what do we need to do, how are we going to continue to run our companies, and just frantic, just chaos. It was a lot of things happening at that period of time, right? And being able to have conversations with leadership around, well, what do we have in place right now that will help us continue to do the great work that this company, this organization does on a daily basis? What do the employees need to have access to in order to stay productive, to move things along, but be safe at the same time, because we didn't know what the COVID thing really was back at that time. And folks were getting sick, and some folks were even dying. And so they were like, we don't want to have liability. So that's the legal stuff coming into the conversations. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of fear. Folks were worried about their families at the same time, where they're trying to lead the organizations that they're working in. So you saw a lot of different emotions and behaviors start to surface. And I said, I that was something I did research on. I said, I really need to figure out how to be able to better support this type of scenario where, um, yes, I have great empathy for every client, every person I meet. I'm an empath, so I feel things very deeply as well. But I want to be able to serve every person that I interact with at the level that they need me to. And I felt that maybe I didn't have all the tools in my toolkit. I would say, think about when if you work with a contractor, a general contractor, they have different tools on their tool belt. They may have some additional tools in their pickup truck or truck that they may go back to if they need additional things to swap out. They have different types of ladders that they use for different types of jobs. And I felt that I was missing another piece in my toolkit of coaching, just to be able to address those challenges that were coming up in those conversations. COVID was one, but also when you're working with leaders, they invest a lot of time. They're working a lot of hours. So with that, different things are happening in their home life. A lot of the leaders, and when I say home life, they're away from home a lot. Maybe some stress and things are happening at home. Maybe some folks are now going down the path of divorce. Their lives are changing. They're thinking about, now my family is getting ready to be in multiple households, how to navigate that. Some other things that came up in that generation or that realm, we have executives who have aging parents, and now they're trying to figure out how to also be a leader, also lead their family, and also be available for their aging parents, and having to navigate those situations. Parents that are aging, some with Alzheimer's, some with other things, trying to make those hard decisions of, can I care for my loved one in my home, or do I need to seek assistance? What type of assistance would be best? So all these different nuances were coming up or showing up in that realm. And so I needed more to be able to serve them well, and to be able to um, be a be a neutral party in that, and be able to help folks experience the situation where they were in that moment, but they were looking to move forward from it. How do I move forward in a positive way and be effective? And so I needed everything I could possibly get my hands on to be ready in those different nuances that were showing up pretty often. So,
And it's fascinating as you're talking because I'm sensing some familiar terrains where, we've got executive coaching and then there's the whole person and all aspects of their life.
mhm,
And, that we're not permeable, we are permeable to everything that is affecting us, not just in this compartmentalized role.
mhm.
So I'm curious because I know you published a dissertation just recently, a few months ago, Unleashing Excellence, Strengthening IT Leaders Through Executive Coaching. Would you be willing to speak about a couple of your key findings? And then we'll open up for Q&A.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Again, I'm a nerd, so I love to read and research. And being in the tech realm for a long time, I often receive the question, why do we always experience these same problems? No matter what we do, we send folks to training, we have different folks come in for training, we, share white papers, we share books, we do book clubs, all these different things, but we're still experiencing the same challenges that we've always experienced in the IT space from 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And I just chuckled and I said, okay. I said, well, this is an area where I should investigate. Why is this why still here? And that was I had an opportunity to interview 20 executives and who were a part of the IT or tech industry, and they were have been in the tech industry for a very long time, and just really through a set of questions, really learn about why is it that they do what they do, um, if there's any changes that they may have started to, I would say, pursue as a result of all of their experience, their wealth of experience and tenure in the space. How did that affect their leadership styles? How did that affect them both personally and professionally? And the personally part is getting into what they may do outside of the office, what they may do outside of the workspace, with their families, their et cetera, their friends. And some of the key findings really is that what came up, one key thing is that a lot of folks were elevated into these leadership, these high level executive roles because of who they knew or because of their success, because they were very successful at being a very technical resource, a very technical SME, subject matter expert in what they did, but they had no prior leadership development training. They had no real concept of what being a leader really meant other than what they saw. And in many cases, they were perpetuating, almost mirroring the behavior of what they had seen others do as in their trajectory as coming up through the ranks, right? And right, wrong, or indifferent, in many cases wrong, it perpetuated the same problems that were happening. And so the my dissertation research actually helped me to see the inner workings of why that was happening, to be able to explain it in a way, and and ultimately the answer to that is, if you look at a lot of different books and articles and what have you, training is always the solution. Well, if training is the answer, then why do we still have these same challenges 30, 40 years later? And so the answer to that is we have another aspect where we're missing accountability. So yes, we're getting the training, but who's holding the leaders accountable to actually incorporating the learnings, the key learnings from that training into their daily lives, into their leadership lifestyle, et cetera. And that's the piece that was missing. And of course, that accountability would stem from executive coaching. And so that was the missing piece in the puzzle. And that's what I talked about in my paper.
Beautiful. And I remember a lot of themes around self-awareness, emotional intelligence, the inner work. Yeah.
Yes. And I'll add one more piece to that, Ferosha, is also being a human-centered leader. And I know we hear different things about human-centered design and things of that nature, but how to be a human-centered leader because not only is that necessary in the workplace, it's also very necessary in our personal lives as a parent, as a spouse, working with family members, serving in organizations as a volunteer. All of that really applies across the board.
And how would you define that for
Sure.
those who may not know that term?
Yeah. So being human-centered is really being attuned to it. It incorporates self-awareness. It also incorporates the ability to have empathy. So being able to connect or see yourself in the shoes of another person. It also incorporates the ability to be flexible. And it may mean being flexible to a person or a group.
Mm,
And also being able to see that flexibility is still being fair and meeting each person that you're interacting with where they are, because every person is different. And so it's a long list of things that encompasses that, but those are some of the key elements that I'm seeing in the research around human-centered leadership. And Harvard did a white paper, a research paper on that talks about this as well. And there's more research papers that are coming out in the ether that are talking about this particular topic. So I invite everybody to take a closer look.
absolutely. So I'm going to invite the group. Maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions, and then we're going to drop into our case study thing. And what I'm wondering, Tonya, if in the meantime, while I gather questions, I'll speak up if you want to put the link to your dissertation.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I'm just curious if anybody here, I'm going to go ahead and change my view here for a second. Anybody here has a question that they'd like to share? If you could maybe raise your hand. Jen, do you got one? Awesome. Either your physical hand and wave it or your digital hand, because it's easier to see digital ones. So Jen, go ahead and hop in.
Tonya, it's brilliant to meet you. I feel as though I have been sitting right next to you these years talking to these IT professionals because I've spent 30 years with IT professionals. And one of my question is about realizing I wouldn't have known how to realize this and what to do with this if I didn't have family members who have a different way of thinking about what it means to be human. And that's based on everything from where we are on the mental spectrum and how we think cognitively and how brilliance comes in so many different forms. But I have found so many of my colleagues just have this unintentional rigidity in the way they think. And so that connecting to things like empathy is actually just difficult. It's not natural for them. So have you found ways to connect with individuals like that?
Yes. And great question. And nice to meet you too, Jan. I will say it's an interesting one because in many cases, when you're working with individuals who are out of touch or out of sync with how they feel and also how they may come across as well, it's you have to it's like an onion. You have to peel back the layers to get to it.
No,
And
we did
and it
not.
uh-oh. It's a work in progress. And so looks like, yeah, there we go. I lost you. There we are, Jen. And so it's like peeling back the layers of the onion and trying to figure out um, where they may be most comfortable engaging in that space. And so and just it's walking that fine line of gray, really, again, meeting them where they are to get a sense of this is where the coaching dance is going to be really important, but really trying to figure out what is going to be the question that's going to get them to open up a little bit more and to connect more with a deeper sense of self-awareness, but without slamming the door shut to your coaching conversation.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I have found with a couple of my clients right now that it's those they struggle without literal questions,
Mhm.
right? So I'm doing this dance between I don't want to ask you a leading question, this is your work, However, it's hard for us to kind of meet in the middle sometimes. So um, offline, one of these days, I want to ask some Ferocious some advice about that as well. How to ask those deep thought-provoking questions, but with a balance of somebody who isn't quite that deep yet. And you have to peel back those layers, right?
Yeah, and it takes, I would say, practice. I would say if you're a parent or if you're an aunt and you're around other, think about if you want to get information from a teenager. I'll say it that way. And teenagers are very private. So if you want to practice that skill, practice with the teenagers that are around you. And it's actually a huge technique that you can take into that space. Because in many cases, teenagers, they won't look you in the eye. They'll look down, they'll look sideways. They don't want to answer the question, why are you asking me that? Right? It's a great space to practice that questioning to see how you can get them to open up and warm up to you. Yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely.
Thank you, Jen. I got a quick request in the chat from
Mhm.
Larissa asking, where did you get your PhD from?
Yes. So my degree is a PhD equivalent, but it's a Doctor of Business Administration, and it is part of the EdBac, which is, I can't remember exactly what EdBac stands for, but it's an organization that links different Doctor of Business Administration programs throughout the world. So we actually go to different conferences and come together and meet and present our research on an annual basis, usually in September. But I attended the University of Missouri St. Louis, and it's one of the highly rated DBA programs in the country.
Beautiful, thank you. So I've got Deborah highlighted here with her question, and then I'm going to go to Reggie, and then we're going to jump into our breakout session.
Sure.
Thank you so much, and thanks for that introduction. I'm wondering whether you have clients who have been directed to go to you as opposed to interested in coming to you. And you mentioned the word accountability. Are there bosses, I don't know what else, supervisors who come to you and say, I want, Deborah to be coached by you, and then I want to know how she's doing, or give me some way to be, for it to be obvious to me that she's made progress. How do you handle that?
Great question, and nice to meet you, Deborah. Um, that is a touchy one because that gets into the third party coaching relationship, and thinking about it from an ICF perspective, we have to follow the code of ethics there. And so being very upfront that with that person that anything that we talk about in our coaching container in that safe space stays in that safe space. It doesn't exit. And so, what I have done is really encouraged leaders who are sending folks to me or to a coach to be coached to have that initial conversation with their person. One second, my voice wanted to leave. My apologies. That they have an initial conversation with their direct reporter, with that person to share what their observations may be first and what they would love for them to investigate or explore with a coach, and ask that person to be willing to have their own conversations with them about what they may be comfortable sharing with them directly one-on-one. So, and I say that because I know many of you have probably heard of the one-on-ones that are happening between a manager and their direct reports, or a lead or skip levels when they're meeting with people even higher up that may not directly report to them. And the quality of those one-on-ones are just not really quite where they should be. So really giving them a structure around, if you're truly going to schedule that one-on-one conversation, really kind of having an agenda and a purpose around why are we meeting and what I'm hoping for you to get from me and what I'm hoping to gain from you, so that there's an agreed upon relationship that's being set there, right? So I work with from that aspect to say, are you having those types of interactions with this person before, because I'm unable to report back exactly what's happening, but I encourage you, these are the types of conversations that you can have legally and independently, and then we can talk about what changes you may be seeing from your side so that I can keep an eye out for if those things are showing up in our coaching conversations, and I can, strategically have those types of conversations with the client, but still will not be able to report back exactly on what's happening there. So walking that fine line, but giving them really empowerment to do what they can do more of or do better, and to get what they need without me crossing the boundaries of confidentiality as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deborah. And I've got Reggie, and we just got a couple of minutes, and we'll definitely want to move over. I love the
Sure.
questions. Hi, Reggie. Good to see you.
Hi, Verusha. Hi, Tonya. Thanks for being here with us. I just have two questions. The first one, really quickly, what book would you recommend someone read to really understand and embody executive presence?
Mhm.
And the second part is speaking about what you've said about leaders, basically just following what they see. I've been a part of that. Not on the positive side, because it's basically, I've seen leaders model the behavior of the higher leader. And what happens is that the behavior gets progressively worse because they want to one up that leader to go up, and they basically just get more, I would say, abrasive with the team. So I'm just wondering, like in your example, for me, I noticed like when I have a one-on-one with someone, like just as an employee, when in that space, they were a different person. But when in the room with that sort of groupthink environment, they just went back into that, that modus operandi of how they operate. So I'm just wondering, maybe from your perspective, how would you go about showing someone something different? And not necessarily leading them and saying, well, this is the values that you should have, but kind of just, again, that deep reflection of asking myself, is this working? Am I doing the right thing? And am I really being a leader? Or am I just modeling something to just kind of fit in? I don't know if I articulated myself clearly for you there, but yeah. Oh,
That
you
was
dropped
fun.
off.
Okay,
There you
that
go.
was fun.
Love
Okay,
Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom happens. So what I heard, Reggie, and thanks for your question. Just it sounded like you were trying to get a sense of um, really how to deal with or interact or coach a person who may not realize their behavior, but also they may be. I heard you mention like wanting to use the term one up, so wanting to be better than maybe their colleagues, their peers, or who they're working with, and so there's this friction. I'm using some different words here just to
Yeah.
summarize, but there's some friction that's coming up. And so it's really, again, dealing with the big E's. I use that as my code for that, because there's egos all around. Identifying, I know in Ferocious program, she talks about the different avatars or archetypes, right? And so not associating the behavior per se with the name, but looking at the behavior as an avatar or an archetype. And if you can start to look at people through those lenses so that you're not quote unquote labeling people inappropriately, it really helps you to identify certain key behaviors, and it will help you to see how best you may coach that particular type of behavior a little bit more effectively. That's one thing that I would say that I do pretty consistently, and it helps me so that I don't attach names or behaviors to certain people. But also in doing that and working with someone who, I would say I would equate that to be an overachiever or a high achiever, even. Once you have that initial conversation or a few conversations with that person, you can kind of get a sense of where they may be on the spectrum and try to understand kind of what's most important to them, and also get a sense of, is it important to them how they may come across to others? Do they want to be seen as a collaborator? Do they want to be seen as a team player? And be able to share that gentle observations or feedback back to say, Could you see how this behavior, how it could come across as, opposite of what you're wanting to get? That kind of thing. And just being able to have that type of exchange in ideas to kind of help them connect their behaviors and their ambition to how it could be seen as something a little bit negative to someone else. So kind of how to help them navigate a little bit gently. And your other question about the book, I have several books, so if it's okay, I'll send Ferocia after this some thoughts and that she could share back with the community with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Reggie. So we've got about 15 minutes, and I'm wondering, do you want to go ahead and put the slides up? And it looks like we might go over a tiny bit. Will that work for you, Tonya?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so I
Absolutely.
know that we might, but I'll let you load up the slides. I've already added them to the chat if folks want to download for the case study. I'm going to get off this camera. There you go. It's all about you.
Thank you. And I am toggling my subtitles off because I teach and the subtitles were showing again. There we go. All right. So if everyone can see my screen, I wanted to share a real world scenario with the group to really get you to think about how you may leverage your coaching, working with executives, working with leaders. And so this is really getting through a real life scenario around leading through uncertainty. Um, and so here's some background on the scenario. So I gave it the title, The Tipping Point, Retaining Talent During Rapid Change. And some context, it's in a tech industry, so technology industry. The situation, there was a recent merger, so companies coming together. With that, there's increased workload, and also it's causing a delayed product launch. And so the stakeholders in this scenario would be the VP of product, who would be your client, their leadership team, senior executives, HR, and customers. Some of the pressure points for this situation is burnout and disengagement in the team. Also, there's conflicting priorities, which we know everybody wants their stuff now. So conflicting priorities between the speed of delivery and also the well-being of employees. And then senior leaders expect results without slowing down the pace of the work that's being performed. And so your role in this scenario is to be an executive coach, leveraging a whole person coaching background and also through a trauma-informed lens. So walking those delicacies of the situation there. All right. So here's the scenario. So you're the executive coach for a VP of product at a fast-paced healthcare tech company. The organization has just gone through a merger. The VP's team, and that's vice president's team, is burned out. The merger has doubled their team's responsibilities, and a major product launch is behind schedule. Senior leadership is pressing for faster delivery, and that would be the C-level leadership, so the CEOs, CIOs, et cetera. Senior leadership is pressing for faster delivery, but your executive coaching client is worried about losing top talent, meaning their employees, due to the stress and poor morale. You have time with your client in your next coaching session. What would you do to help in this situation? All right. So what I would love for each of you to do is, as you are entering in a small group discussion and breakouts, really you're looking at, you have a meeting with your VP, as we mentioned in the scenario. How would you structure the coaching session to address this challenge? And as you're thinking about the scenario and how you may approach it, and I would love for you to use all of your coaching training, your coaching background, your experience, personal and professional, your critical thinking skills to really think about what would be your first move this this situation as their coach, what are some of the key questions you would ask to uncover what coaching tools or frameworks might you leverage in this? And how would you help to balance immediate business need with their well-being and the long-term sustainability of them as a leader in this organization? And as you're thinking through these down,
Oh, I'm going to pick up. Where's Tonya? I think, did we lose her? Oh, let me see.
I
Zoom
think
is
we
not
did.
being nice.
No, you're starting to cut out a little bit.
My
So
apologies on that.
that's okay. I'm wondering if I might suggest a little bit of an adaptation. Maybe we can think about that beautiful question. You said jot down 2 or 3 key actions or questions, just with our timeline frame.
Absolutely.
Okay. Was there more to share?
Can we see the previous slide one more time? Maybe take a picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tanya, before I send them in?
Actually, no. So if you could think of this scenario and think about how you would approach it, it would be great to get a sense of what you came up with as you thought about this situation in your group setting.
Perfect. And when we come back in about 7 minutes, we'll invite everybody to share in the chat. So it might make sense to decide which person in the group is going to kind of report. And then Tanya's going to share what she did. Jump on over. I'll go ahead and turn on the recording as we're coming back. I think we're in speaker view. I always like that quiet part, the quiet before the storm. So those of you that are coming back, if you would please put some of your ideas that you came up with. I know this could probably take an entire day to get through, but maybe share in the chat what you came up with. And there's no perfect or right way. It's always learning from each other. I think we're all back. We are. You go ahead.
All right. All right. So welcome back, everybody. Do you want me to just go ahead and mention what I would do? Okay. I see folks are adding in the chat what you came up with in your group discussions. I would love for you to compare it to what I'm about to share and share some additional food for thought. So I kind of gave a little bit of my approach to this already in the conversation earlier with Ferocia. But if you're thinking about the situation, it's really a high stress, high paced situation and that you would probably deem as mission critical. And so it's a we must get this done type of scenario. So with that, there's pressure coming from the C-suite to the vice president over this product team, and also that heavy pressure is being carried forward to the employees who are doing the work to get things done. And so in preparing for this coaching conversation, really it's about how to establish the psychological safety in this scenario. So how do you help the VP of product understand that you hear them, they're seen, they're heard, and you are acknowledging that they are in a period of major uncertainty right now. And with that major uncertainty and the criticality of what they're working on, that there's probably a high level of stress that they're experiencing. And so being able to establish that piece in the process and helping them to really come to terms and hopefully agree that yes, they're seeing that too, and acknowledging that what the pressure that they're experiencing is a whole piece of it. Another piece of it is leveraging that whole person coaching lens. So, um, yes, it's very critical for this particular outcome to be successful and to be positive, right? Everybody's looking, everybody's needing to get the work done, but really going into how do we not just only look at the performance issues, but what is it that this vice president of product really values? What's most important to them as a person, as a leader, and what's most important to them about how they best serve and support the employees that report to them. So that's bringing that human-centered leadership into this. So it's going to be their values, their purpose. We're going to be looking at their resilience and also their ability to connect, with their employees, their team, to be encouraging, to be empowering, and to be supportive. These are some aspects to really focus on. We talked about trauma informed earlier, and that's really being able to not necessarily use the T word, because using the trauma word can be triggering. So how not to be triggering, but to be aware of how this level of stress and pressure, think about, for many of you, if you ever had to prepare for a big meeting, or maybe it's for a holiday and everybody's coming to your house, or maybe you have to cook something or present something. Think about that pressure, right? It's a pressure cooker situation that for some people can bring about a certain level of trauma or a greater sense of stress. So being able to help this particular leader recognize the signs that they could be experiencing some sort of stress from this, um, and also are where they are in the level of pressure and stress. Do they feel like they still have the energy, the motivation to keep pushing forward, or are they starting to feel like they're running out of gas, right? So are they starting to feel like they're a little drained, overwhelmed? These are key things to really look for, and to really be able to talk through with this leader, because those things can have a ripple effect, a trickle down effect to the folks that they're leading and serving, which affects the morale of the team. You also want to look at ways to prioritize the work that's happening. So in my realm, we refer to that as business agility. So how do we move? How do we be nimble enough to move and pivot based off the needs of the environment, based off the needs of the customer, based off the needs of the industry? So how do we prioritize what's most important to do now and effectively plan for what needs to be worked on now? And then, so using a framework that I mentioned is now, next, and later. It's a popular framework that's out there. What's important to do now, what can be placed in the column for next, and then what can be placed in the later path. And this works very much in a regular everyday coaching conversation, so that not everything is number one. And that helps with the balance too. And then last, thinking about the different types of coaching tools that you may use in this scenario. Depending on if this is the first time you've met with this client, it may be helpful to have that use a coaching tool, such as either the Wheel of Life, but not giving it to them, maybe having a conversation in it. In this case, with an executive, to really ask those different things. Well, how would you rate how you're feeling about your work life right now on a scale of 1 to 10? Not giving them the sheet to fill out, but to ask that question and do that assessment in a partnership setting. So that's one. You could also leverage your insights, any observations that you've had just based off of the conversations you've had with the executive. If you've had any opportunity to really sit in and watch the interactions with that executive and their team. So those can be some things to bring into the conversation as well. Leveraging different techniques around reframing. So in this situation, someone that's under this level of pressure or stress, can you help them to reframe it to where it's less overwhelming, but it's more I can do-ish type of conversation. So instead of it being this is impossible, looking at what is possible. Reframing is a huge benefit and technique, and it helps to really break things down in a way that's more palatable to move forward. And then also in this whole process as a coach, we're co-creating what those next steps are going to be. So how do we be a partner in that process to really co-create what are based off of what the executive or the leader has shared with you about what's doable, what's possible, what they feel most comfortable with. How can we work together to put that into a plan? Again, them leading, but you're supporting, right? Something that they feel that's very doable for them to move forward with. And there's a lot more that I can add here, but these are some things that I would recommend in short.
Beautiful. Woo! I'm noticing Zach has a question, so maybe Zach can jump in and then we'll do a wrap up.
Yeah, quickly. First, thank you, Dr. Rivers. Thank you, Ferosha, for creating this forum and just sharing your knowledge today, Dr. Rivers. This is super enlightening. Question for you about how you leverage values in that corporate space. Are you always looking for that in their language? Is it something you introduce directly? Would love to understand that more.
Absolutely. So I have a cheat sheet for that, and great question, Zach. I have a cheat sheet for that. So what the cheat sheet is, every company has a website, and on their website they have their mission, vision, and values. And so that's my cheat sheet. That's my rubric. I'll pull that up, I'll print it out, whatever is needed, and I'll say, I noticed that this is what your company stands by. What are your thoughts about this? How does that resonate with you? In what areas do you agree or disagree with it? And also asking about how might you improve it? And these types of things can give you some insight on where the disconnects are without you running a risk of running into the situation with some assumptions that could be right or may not be entirely correct, right? But it allows the coaching client to really kind of paint that canvas of where do they really align with those things. So that's my cheat sheet, and that's how I do it without offending anybody.
Awesome. Well, I want to say with massive appreciation for you sharing your time and your brilliance. It's always a delight to be in your radiance, but I also feel like we could go on for hours. So maybe we should have done a longer one.
Yeah.
But one of
Go ahead. I'm honored to be a part of my community. This is home for me. So I am honored to be a part of this community and to talk about these things. And hopefully it will encourage you to consider executive coaching, because executives are people. They're the people that you want to work with every day. So just know that in this realm, they're looking for action, they're looking for success. And that's what your regular coaching clients are looking for too. So I hope you'll take a look at this area as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. I've seen some beautiful comments coming your direction, Tonya. And I also wanted to just put a shout out. I will send the recording after everything's processed. So if anybody wants to come back, we're going to be about every 2 to 3 weeks. We have another event. So we'll probably put that in the email as well, just to remind. But also what a lot of people don't know is Tonya and I, over the past year-ish, we've been putting together an executive coaching specialization program. And so it's still in the forming stages of everything, because I think, I don't know if you'd agree, but I feel like the terrain's really changing with the depth of uncertainty and the stress and the struggle. And so a lot of the things that we would normally develop, there's that extra layer of needing that more trauma layer, that more emotional regulation, co-regulation. And so it's going to be a goodie and a golden one. But thanks again, Tonya. We'll stick around if anybody has any further questions, but I know we're a little bit after already. So thank you for being able to hang out. I know that a lot of people had to get on to their next meeting. So thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And I wish you all well, and keep going, because there's so much work to be done.
Oh yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.